My fiancée gave me an unthinkable ultimatum. Either send my kids to boarding school and pretend they don't exist, or the wedding was off. So I chose my children, canceled everything, and stood back as her carefully curated life and entitled expectations came crashing down around her. I'm a 38-year-old single dad raising two kids, ages 10 and 12. Their mom passed away a few years ago, and ever since, it's just been the three of us. Life hasn't always been easy, but I think we've done a pretty good job holding everything together. My kids are amazing, kind, smart, and strong, and they've been my biggest reason to keep going. About a year and a half ago, I met someone. Let's call her Sarah. She's 34, and we met through some mutual friends at a barbecue. At first, she seemed like exactly what I'd been hoping to find. Outgoing, charming, with this kind of energy that drew people in. We clicked right away, and pretty quickly, we started dating. Sarah made a real effort to get to know my kids, which I really appreciated. She'd take them out for ice cream, hang out with them at the park, always trying to be involved. My kids were polite, but I could tell they were holding back a bit. Maybe because they'd already been through so much, and they didn't want to get too attached too fast. I figured that was understandable. These things take time, right? In the beginning, it all felt good. Sarah seemed to understand that my kids were my everything, that we came as a package. She talked about how she admired how I parented and how she wanted to be part of our lives. It felt nice to have someone in my life who seemed to really get it. Over time, we got more serious. Sarah and I started spending a lot more time together, and she even started staying over sometimes. The kids were okay with it, not overly enthusiastic, but not resistant either. I thought we were all slowly adjusting to this new dynamic. But looking back, there were small signs I probably should have paid more attention to. For one, Sarah began making comments about the house. Things like, it's cute, but maybe we should modernize it, or the kids' rooms are adorable, but wouldn't it be fun to redecorate? At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured she just wanted to feel like the house was partly hers, and I was okay with that. She also started talking about our future, how we could travel, build a life together, maybe even have a baby someday. I wasn't necessarily opposed to that, but I always made it clear that my kids would always come first. She'd smile and agree, but now, I'm not sure she truly meant it. Then there was her brother, Jake. He'd come up in conversation now and then, but never in a great light. Sarah said he'd lost his job, was staying with their parents, and couldn't seem to get his life together. She talked about him like he was hopeless, but also like it was everyone else's responsibility to save him. I didn't think much of it. Everyone has that one family member who needs help sometimes. I didn't see it as a big issue. As I got to know Sarah better, I started to see just how much of a mess Jake really was. He couldn't keep a job, made one bad decision after another, and didn't seem interested in turning things around. But even with all that, it didn't feel like a deal breaker at the time. Sarah and I were getting closer, and I was starting to seriously picture a future with her. After being on my own for so long, it felt good to imagine having someone by my side again. About a year into the relationship, I began thinking about proposing. Sarah had been dropping hints for a while, showing me pictures of rings she liked, bringing up wedding venues. I wasn't oblivious, and honestly, I liked the idea. My kids were thriving, we had a stable routine, and I thought maybe it was time to take that next step. I planned a simple, heartfelt proposal at the park where we had one of our first dates. Nothing flashy, just something real. That day, I was nervous but hopeful. As we walked, I told her how much she meant to me, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry me. She said yes, grinning, slipping on the ring, already dreaming out loud about the wedding and our life ahead. In that moment, it felt like everything had fallen into place. But I had no clue how fast it would start to unravel. The first few weeks after the proposal were a whirlwind. Sarah threw herself into wedding planning, picking color palettes, browsing venues, obsessing over Pinterest boards. I was busy balancing work and the kids, so I let her take charge of the details. She seemed thrilled, and I didn't want to dull her excitement. But slowly, little things started to bother me. It started with offhand comments, how the house needed a woman's touch, or how she imagined a more polished future. I wasn't even sure what she meant by that, but I let it slide, thinking she just wanted to feel more at home. Then came the suggestions, gentle at first. Things like, maybe we could clear out some of the kids' old stuff, open up the space a little, or what if we moved a few things to the garage to make their rooms tidier? On their own, these comments didn't seem like much. But over time, it started to feel like she was slowly chipping away at the life we'd built. I didn't say anything right away. I convinced myself she was just excited about creating a life with us, and maybe I was reading too much into it. Then one Saturday, she showed up with a catalog and a whole plan to redo the living room. She talked about upgrading the furniture, giving the space a more grown-up vibe. I didn't understand. Our couch was fine, the table was sturdy, and the kids' beanbags weren't going anywhere. She went on about making it less chaotic and more adult. I had to bite my tongue. This was our family home, not show house. The first real disagreement came when she suggested turning the spare room, which doubled as my workspace in the kids' art room, into a guest bedroom. She called it a compromise since the kids could still use it sometimes. But that room was more than just extra space. It was where the kids did their crafts, where I worked late into the night. It felt like ours. I told her no, we weren't changing it. She didn't argue, but I could tell she was annoyed. She made a passive-aggressive remark about how we need to make room for everyone eventually, and I just let it drop. Around this time, Jake started popping up more in conversations. Sarah said he was still staying with their parents and hinted that he needed help. I didn't know how to respond. He wasn't my responsibility, and I had enough on my plate already. Then one day, she asked if Jake could come over for dinner. She said he wanted to meet me and the kids since we were going to be family. I agreed, even though I wasn't sure what to expect. Dinner was uncomfortable. Jake showed up late, smelled like bad choices, and spent the whole night complaining. He barely even acknowledged the kids, who had been looking forward to meeting him, and only really talked to Sarah. I tried to keep things light, but it felt like pulling teeth. After he left, Sarah acted like the evening had been amazing. I honestly didn't know what dinner she was at, but it wasn't the same one I just sat through. I told her Jake seemed like he was going through some things, and she instantly got defensive, saying he just needed a chance. I let it go, but the way she snapped to defend him rubbed me the wrong way. In the weeks that followed, she brought up Jake more and more. She told me her parents were pressuring her to do more for him, and how torn she felt between helping her family and focusing on our future together. I could tell she was trying to get at something, but I wasn't going to take the bait. That's when her requests started getting bolder. She floated the idea of Jake staying with us for a while after the wedding. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that, but she wouldn't let it go. She said it'd only be temporary and that he'd stay out of the way. I asked where exactly he'd stay, and she casually suggested the spare room. I reminded her that was the kids' room, and she brushed it off like it didn't matter. The conversation didn't really go anywhere, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. Around that time, I also noticed Sarah started acting differently around the kids. She began asking them about school and their routines, which seemed innocent at first. But then she started making these weird little comments, saying things like they'd benefit from more structure or how a change in environment might be good for them. Then one day, my son asked me what a boarding school was. I froze. I asked him where he heard about that, and he said Sarah brought it up. That's when every alarm in my head went off. When I confronted her about it, she laughed and said she was just talking about how some boarding schools have great programs for kids. She claimed it was just a casual conversation, but I didn't buy it. I told her not to put ideas like that in their heads. She got defensive, said she was just trying to help. At that point, the cracks in our relationship were getting too big to ignore. It was starting to feel like Sarah didn't want to build a life with us. She wanted to reshape ours to fit what she had in mind. I felt like I wasn't blending families. I was being pushed into making sacrifices I wasn't okay with. After that tense talk about the boarding school, I thought we had moved past it. I convinced myself it was just a misunderstanding, maybe her awkward way of trying to bond with the kids. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, because I still believed we were working toward the same future. But then the pieces started coming together, and what I saw wasn't good. I didn't know how far she was planning to take it until one night when she sat me down and laid everything out. It started like any normal evening. The kids were upstairs doing homework, and I was on the couch trying to unwind. Sarah walked in with that determined look, the kind that told me I probably wasn't going to like what she had to say. She sat down across from me. "We need to talk," she said. I sighed. "All right, what's on your mind?" She paused for a second, which was weird. Sarah's not usually one to hold back when she wants something. "I've been thinking a lot about how things will work once we're married," she said carefully. "Okay," I replied, already bracing myself. "It's about the house," she continued. "I don't think it's going to work the way it is now. Not with all of us here." I frowned. "What do you mean? We're doing fine." She shook her head like I was missing the obvious. "No, we're not. This place is too small. If we want to live comfortably, we'll need to make some changes." I could already feel my patience slipping. "Sarah, the kids have their rooms. How about my office/spare room? It's not perfect, but it works. What kind of changes are you talking about?" That's when she dropped the bomb. "I think we should consider sending the kids to boarding school." I just stared at her, trying to process what she'd said, remembering that the kids had already brought that up too. "Boarding school? Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm serious," she said, her tone firm. "I've been researching it. Some of these schools are incredible. They get a top-notch education, make new friends, learn to be independent. It's a great opportunity." "And what's the real reason you're suggesting this?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Because this doesn't feel like it's about the kids." She paused just for a second. "Fine," she said, her voice sharpening. "If they went to boarding school, Jake could move in and have his own room. He needs stability, and this would give him a chance to start over." And there it was, the truth. I shook my head, anger rising. "You want me to send my kids away so your unemployed, drunk brother can have a room in their home? Do you even hear yourself?" She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Jake's going through a rough time. He needs support, and this would help all of us. It's not just about him. It's about our future. What's best for everyone." I repeated, voice rising. What's best for my kids is staying in their home, with their routine, their friends, their dad, not being shipped off so Jake can crash here. Her face hardened. You're being so short-sighted, she snapped. You're not even open to what boarding school could offer them. It's not like I'm suggesting something bad. They'd get an amazing education, and we'd finally have space to start fresh. I don't need a fresh start, I said firmly. And my kids sure don't. What they need is stability, something they've barely had since their mom died. And I'm not going to throw that away because Jake can't get his act together. Her frustration boiled over. Why are you being so difficult? Jake is family. He needs us. Isn't that what family does? Helps each other. Jake is your family. I shot back. Mine is upstairs doing homework in the home that's supposed to be their safe space. You don't get to come in and decide that your brother's comfort matters more than their well-being. That seemed to hit a nerve. Her tone turned from defensive to hostile. You're acting like I'm trying to hurt them, she said sharply. I'm not. I'm trying to create a life where we all have room to breathe. But you're so stuck in your ways you can't see how good this could be. This isn't about what's good for everyone. I fired back. This is about you trying to push my kids out of their home for your brother. And that's not happening. Not now, not ever. She jumped up and crossed her arms. Fine, she said, try not to explode the way she usually does. If you're not even willing to consider it, then maybe we need to rethink everything. I stood up, too, staring right at her. What's that supposed to mean? It means, she said slowly, if you can't put my family first for once, then maybe this just isn't going to work. I'm not marrying someone who doesn't respect my family. I stared at her, stunned. Respect your family? You want to talk about respect? How about respecting my kids? My family. She didn't flinch. This is your choice, she said coldly. Either you choose me or your kids. Your call. I won't settle for less. She walked out of the room, leaving me standing there in complete silence. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I'd known something was off for weeks, but this was another level. For the first time since proposing, I started to wonder if I'd made a huge mistake. The tension in the house had been rising for weeks. Every time she brought up Jake, it turned into an argument. Then, out of nowhere, Jake showed up without warning, and I was disgusted. The nerve of it left me speechless. How could someone be so shameless? So clueless that they couldn't grasp the basics. You don't just barge into someone's life expecting a handout. It wasn't even the first time he'd shown up uninvited. But after everything recently, I had no patience left. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen making breakfast, and the kids were in the living room watching cartoons. Then came a knock, sharp and deliberate, the kind that says I'm not leaving till you answer. I already had a bad feeling. Ignore it. I called to the kids, figuring it was a delivery or someone trying to sell something. But the knocking didn't stop. When I opened the door, there was Jake standing there with his usual smug grin. He had that laid-back, cocky vibe, like he was just dropping by to chill with a buddy, not barging into something he had no business being part of. Hey man, he said with a nod. Figured I'd swing by. Got a minute. I blinked, trying to figure out what the hell he was doing there. Sarah didn't say you were coming, I said, flat and unimpressed. Jake shrugged. Didn't think I needed an invite. She said you two were still sorting out the details about me moving in, so I thought I'd come check the place out. The nerve of this guy was unreal. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, keeping my tone even. We haven't agreed to anything about you moving in. Jake let out a laugh like I just made a joke. Come on, man. Sarah said it's basically a done deal. Just figuring out the logistics, right? Before I could respond, he stepped right past me into the house like he owned the place. My youngest looked up from the couch, clearly confused, while my oldest gave me a look that said everything I was feeling. What is he doing here? Nice setup, Jake said, glancing around like he was raiding the place. He dropped down on the couch, stretched out like he belonged there. I clenched my fist, doing my best to stay calm. Jake, this isn't a good time. You should have called first. Before he could respond, Sarah walked in the front door. She froze for a second when she saw Jake, then plastered on an overly bright smile. Oh, Jake, I didn't expect you this early. Early? I shot back. I didn't even know he was coming. She waved a hand like it was nothing. Must have slipped my mind. No harm done, right? I looked at the kids and told them to head upstairs. Once they were out of earshot, I turned to Sarah and Jake. What's going on? I asked, my voice tight. Jake just told me he's here to check out the house, because you've been talking about him moving in. Sarah's smile wavered, but she recovered fast. Babe, she said, stepping closer, I was just trying to help. Jake's in a tough spot, and I figured if he could see how it might work, maybe you'd be more open to the idea. We've already talked about this. I said, my patience running thin. I told you I'm not okay with it. Still stretched out on the couch, Jake chimed in. Relax, man. It's not like I'm asking for much. Just a bed and some space to breathe. You won't even notice I'm here. I turned to him, my voice ice cold. This isn't your call to make, Jake. And it's not happening. He scoffed and stood up. All right. No need to freak out. I'll leave you two to figure it out. He grabbed his jacket and walked out, mumbling something under his breath. As soon as the door closed, I turned to Sarah. What the hell was that? What do you mean? She snapped. Jake's my family. He needs help, and I'm trying to find a solution. You're the one making it harder than it has to be. I'm making it harder, I said, my voice rising. You've been making decisions behind my back about my house, my kids, my family. How is that okay? Sarah crossed her arms and glared. You're being impossible. Jake is family. Family helps each other. Why can't you understand that? Because this isn't just about Jake, I shot back. This is about you trying to push my kids out of their home to make room for him. They've been through enough. I'm not turning their lives upside down just to make things easier for your brother. Her face twisted with frustration. You're so damn stubborn, she spat. Do you even care how hard this is for me? I'm trying to build a future with you, and you're too busy clinging to your perfect little setup to see that. This perfect little setup is my kid's life, I said, and I won't apologize for protecting it. If you can't see that, maybe you're not ready to be part of this family. Her expression hardened, and I knew what was coming before she said it. Fine, she said coldly. If you're not willing to compromise, maybe we need to rethink this whole thing. I stood there, letting it sink in. Then I took a deep breath and met her eyes. You're right, I said. We do need to rethink this. And I've made my decision. Her face flashed with something, shock, maybe even anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm choosing my kids, I said, steady and clear. They come first always. If you can't accept that, then we don't have a future together. The silence was deafening. She stared at me like I just knocked the wind out of her. But I didn't back down. Is that it then? She asked, her voice shaking. Yeah, I said. That's it. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her speechless in the living room. Walking away from Sarah that day, I felt a mess of emotions. There was relief in knowing I stood my ground and put my kids first. But there was also this heavy weight in my chest. This wasn't just the end of an argument. It was the end of everything we'd been building. I knew the breakup was coming. It had been on the horizon for a while, but that didn't make it any easier. Sarah didn't take it well. For the first couple of days, she said almost nothing. Just stopped by quietly to grab a few things she'd left at the house. I thought maybe she was just processing it all. But then the storm hit. It started with the wedding. She called one night, voice cold and distant. So I assume you're canceling everything? She asked. Yes, I said, keeping it short. No reason to keep planning. Her response was immediate. Good. Then we need to talk about the money. I frowned. What money? The deposits, she snapped. I already put down money for the caterer. I expect you to reimburse me. You're the one ending this. It's only fair. I paused, realizing that even now, she wasn't going to stop pushing. Sarah, I already paid the deposit for the venue, and it was way more than what you spent on catering. That's not the point, she snapped. You're the one walking away. You should take responsibility for the fallout. I took a deep breath. I'm not reimbursing you for anything. We both put money into this. We both knew there were risks with non-refundable deposits. You made your choices, and I made mine. This is on both of us. She didn't like that. So you're just going to leave me stuck with the bill? I'm already out thousands, I said. The venue, the invitations, the flowers. I paid for all of that. I'm not shelling out more just because you're trying to shift the blame. The argument went nowhere. She kept pressing. I stood my ground. Eventually, she hung up on me. But the messages didn't stop. Over the next few days, she bombarded me with texts, emails, and voicemails, all demanding I pay her back for the caterer. At one point, she even threatened to take me to small claims court if I didn't comply. But it wasn't just about the money. Sarah couldn't let it go quietly. She started twisting the story, telling friends and family her version, where I was the heartless guy who abandoned her and refused to help her struggling brother. People I hadn't heard from in months were suddenly reaching out, asking what was going on, why I was being so cruel. One of her distant cousins, someone I'd only met once, even had the nerve to lecture me about family values. Jake's going through a tough time, she said. You could have made a small sacrifice to help him. It's not like you'd be out on the street. I bit my tongue. No point arguing with someone who didn't know the full story. But still hurt. No one seemed to care about my kids, or how Sarah's choices would have wrecked their lives. All they cared about was her side of the story, where I was the villain. Thankfully, I had my own circle, close friends, and a few relatives who knew the truth and backed me without hesitation. You did the right thing, one of them said. Anyone who tries to push your kids out of their home doesn't deserve a place in your life. The aftermath was exhausting. Canceling the wedding turned into a logistical nightmare. I had to call vendors, explain just enough of the situation without airing too much personal drama, and deal with the awkwardness of canceling an event everyone had already saved the date for. Most people were kind and understanding, but a few got nosy and tried to dig for more details. I kept it vague, just saying it was a mutual decision and that we'd realized we weren't on the same page about our future. Through it all, my kids didn't fully understand what was going on, but they could tell something was different. One night, my oldest asked me, "So, we're not getting a stepmom anymore?" I smiled softly and shook my head. "No, we're not. But that's okay. We're still a family, and that's never going to change." They looked relieved, and that moment confirmed I'd made the right decision. The idea of them being sent away to some boarding school just so Jake could take over their rooms still makes my blood boil. Sarah completely underestimated how seriously I take being a dad. That was her biggest mistake. The final straw came about a week later. Sarah showed up unannounced to grab more of her things. She walked into the house like she still had some kind of claim to it, scanning the room like she was checking what was missing. At first, she didn't say much. She quietly packed while I stayed in the kitchen, giving her space. But as she was about to leave, she paused in the doorway, turned to me, and said coldly, "You're going to regret this. You had a chance to build something better, and you threw it away." I looked at her, calm but firm. "No, Sarah, I didn't throw anything away. I protected what matters most, my kids and their home. If you can't see that, then this was never going to work." She stared at me for a second, like she wanted to argue, but didn't know what to say. Eventually, she scoffed, muttered something under her breath, and walked out for the last time. The house is quieter now. Honestly, this isn't the future I pictured when I proposed, but maybe that's a good thing. My kids are safe, this is still their home, and I've finally gotten rid of the chaos Sarah was trying to bring into our lives. Still, part of me wonders if I missed any red flags early on that could have saved us all this trouble. I'm still processing everything, but I'd appreciate hearing your thoughts or advice. I'll share more if anything big happens. Thanks for reading, Reddit. So, here's the final update. I thought breaking up and canceling the wedding would be the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. Walking away from Sarah wasn't just about keeping my kids safe and our home intact. It meant facing a storm I didn't see coming. She started spreading lies about me, twisting the story to make herself the victim. She told mutual friends and even some of my own family that I was abusive and controlling. Suddenly, my phone was blowing up with texts and calls from people asking what was going on. Some were supportive, but others straight up accused me of being someone who'd drive a partner to the edge. One mutual friend, let's call him Dave, actually called me and said, "Hey man, I heard you made Sarah's life hell. What's going on?" I had to take a breath before answering. "Dave, do you seriously believe I'd do that? She wanted me to send my kids to boarding school so her brother could move into their rooms. That's the truth." Thankfully, Dave listened, and once I laid everything out, he backed off. But not everyone was so reasonable. Sarah had always been good at playing the victim, and Jake, he wasn't any better. A week after the breakup, he randomly texted me, "You're a spineless coward for not helping your family. I might come by to get what's mine. Better hope I don't have to force it." The entitlement was insane. I hadn't taken anything from Jake. The only thing I did was stop him from bulldozing his way into my house. But that text wasn't just insulting, it was threatening. I wasn't taking any chances. The next day, I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. For a few days, I braced myself, half expecting Jake to show up and cause a scene. But instead, everything went weirdly quiet. Later, I found out why. A mutual friend told me Jake had been caught stealing from Sarah. Apparently, during one of his drunken benders, he got into her bank account and cleaned it out. And I'm not talking about a little cash. He drained thousands. When I heard that, I wasn't even surprised. Jake had always been a leech. This time, though, he crossed a line. After stealing her money, he disappeared. He stopped answering calls and texts, and no one had seen him. Sarah was left panicking, trying to figure out how to pay her bills while also dealing with the mountain of debt Jake had dumped on her. And just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, Sarah showed up at my house. No call, no warning. She just knocked on the door, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I opened it, and before I could say a word, she jumped right in with, "I need your help. Jake stole everything. I don't know what to do." I just stood there for a second, letting it sink in. I thought about everything she'd put me and my kids through. Whatever sympathy I might have felt vanished. "Sarah," I said, calm but clear, "this isn't my problem. You made your choice. You wanted Jake to move in. You put him above everything else, including my kids. Now you're dealing with the fallout." Her face changed instantly, from desperate to furious. "How can you be so heartless?" she snapped. "I thought you cared about me." "I did," I said, "but you show me who you really are. You chose your brother's comfort over my kids' well-being. I'm not cleaning up that mess. This is on you." She tried to argue, but I cut her off. "You need to leave. I'm done." She stood there, stunned. Then without another word, she turned and walked away. Over the next few weeks, the mess just kept unraveling. Jake was still missing, Sarah's finances were a disaster, and people finally started putting the pieces together. The lies she told about me didn't hold up, and as the truth came out, more and more people started distancing themselves from her. Looking back, I don't regret any of it. Not the breakup, not canceling the wedding, and definitely not choosing my kids over Sarah and her chaotic family. It was a hard lesson, but one I'll never forget. The people you let into your life should bring peace, not take it away. And if protecting that peace means shutting the door on someone who doesn't respect your boundaries, then so be it. My kids will always come first. That's never going to change.